I no longer allow one bad case to ruin my entire journey now.
I
And
need to take a deep breath on that.
I know.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Seibold, and you're tuned in to another episode of Mind of the Month. And this is really where I'd like you to listen to people who I adore. And I know their stories will inspire you, and their lessons are just so important for you to hear. And I am super excited, absolutely happy, and so thrilled and honored to have Rozy Khan with us here. Everyone, cheers for Rozy. Hi, Rozy.
Hi, how are you?
I am really well. Thank you for being here with us. Oh, it's an honor because, people who don't know you yet, after this interview with you, they will know what an incredible woman you are. You are an ICU doctor, intensive care unit doctor, based in America, right now in California, and you are at the front line. This is a crucial time we are talking together. We have been spending time last year together in a completely different scenario, and this is where we got to know each other, had wonderful conversations, and I knew now is the time to bring you in because I do want to honor you for being at the front line, but there is so much more about you that I thought we'll bring this in and bring to everyone the top 3 lessons about the corona crisis from you as an intensive care unit doctor from a slightly non-medical perspective, right? So
Yeah,
can you just share a tiny bit of background about you before we go into the top 3 lessons?
sure. So I'm a double board certified critical care doctor in the United States, and I have been in ICU practice for the last 7 years. My training took 13 years. But now I had taken a break. I had resigned last year from my position as the co-director of the neurosurgical ICU at a university hospital in the United States to focus in on building a business to help pre-medical students get into medical school. It's called the Future Doctor Formula. But then this year, with everything that was going on with COVID cases, I knew that I was needed. There's a severe shortage of ICU doctors in the United States. And so I signed up to fly around and work in COVID units. So I've been doing that for about a month now. And it's been a roller coaster of emotions going back to clinical practice. It's fun and it's thrilling, but it's also really, it's balancing. It has a very balanced energy because there's a lot of sadness to what I do as well. But
Yeah. So if someone asks you right now how you are, is there even a short answer for that? Or is it you are so filled with being there and offering your service and being flown around to crucial places right now? Um, how are you and how's your family?
yeah, I think overall I'm good.
Hmm.
Um, I have just come over my exhaustion because this was my week off. I'm working 3 weeks a month, 84 hours a week. So during that period of time, I am
4 hours.
exhausted. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Our shifts are 12-hour shifts. So if I'm working 7 days during that week, that's 84 hours. It's a lot. But so it's physically exhausting, but I think I've learned how to mentally protect myself and just catching up on sleep. And once I've done that, then I'm usually good.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been through this type of battle with burnout and exhaustion before. So I have a wellness plan in place to kind of protect me for that. And we'll talk about that.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm glad you have, because otherwise you wouldn't even manage to get a grin in your face. I mean, this
Yeah.
is for many people so overwhelming. And I know you from a character. You are cheerful, you're positive, you look out for the good in the world and see things in a bigger picture. And I guess this is some part of what, is really crucial there for you. And can you just, before we dive into the three top lessons, tell me the difference between an emergency doctor, like an ER doctor, and an ICU doctor? Because from where we are, we maybe, like in Europe, not have a clear distinction there, and that might be important to know.
So the emergency room doctor deals with acute emergencies, immediate, right away, but then isn't able to care for that patient long term. So if a patient comes in, is critically ill, and needs to stay on life support in the hospital, the ER doctor would then pass that patient on to me. So then that patient would go into the intensive care unit, and I would see that person every day for that week that I'm there on service. Whereas the emergency room doctor fixes them immediately within a few hours, and then passes them on to some sort of doctor within the hospital, intensive care unit doctor, or a hospitalist doctor that sees them on the regular wards. So that's the difference.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. I know that you are also a mentor to students who want to get onto the medical school. So I'm sure they are looking out for you, how you are going through this intensive time right now, because normally you're mentoring them getting into the medical schools, and now you are at the front line again, which is going to be a whole new experience for you to teach from that pool of experience. So you mentioned the wellness plan. This must be so important. I mean, for everyone listening, if you haven't got a self-care routine in place by now, listen out to this. There will be lots of goodies in here for you to take from Rozy, because she is there dealing with crucial stuff face on. And if you are sitting at home listening to this, make it relevant for you. Listen out to the things which she is mentioning so that they make sense for you in your life where you are. And might point out things in the show notes below how to make that even more relevant for you. But so first up, what do you think is so important then? The top 3 lessons you would want to share from the front line. I mean, it's intensive. So how do you do it? What's the first thing you want to share?
So let's just dive into wellness plan, since that's what we were talking about. So having a wellness plan is really, really, really important. So in 2013, when I finished my training, I actually did not want to be a doctor anymore, and I was going to quit. And I started looking into website development and other things that I enjoyed as a different career. And at the time, I didn't understand what burnout actually was. And I was just burned out. I was done. I didn't want to do it anymore, but that's because I wasn't caring for myself. And medical training, I think in the United States and other places, is so grueling that you're constantly working 80 hours a week, and it wears on your soul after a while. So I came out of that burnout creating priorities on what I actually wanted to do and what I was actually passionate about. And I negotiated a job that allowed me to get enough sleep. I mean, that was just step number 1, is really good sleep. But now I've tried so many different things, like meditation, journaling, and energy healing and visualization, and have tried so many different wellness options that I know what works best for me and what helps me. So very specifically, I use Pat Longo's surround, ground, and shield exercise. Mm-hmm. So before I go into work, I try to ground myself and my energy, so that as an empath, I'm not absorbing other people's energies when I'm at work. Yeah. So I surround myself in a bubble of white protective light. And then I visualize 2 cords from my legs going down into the earth, grounding me. And then I shield myself with a vest, and it's similar to a fluoroscopy lead vest that we wear at work. So I'll pretend I'm wearing that, and then I will zip up my spine. because chakras are on your spine. And so I imagine a fake zipper going all the way up. And
Mm.
I just feel protected.
Yeah. And we know how important our intentions are with our mindset. How we present ourselves is the energy we bring with us into the space we're going in. So if
Mhm.
we have all this in place, then I mean, you are so strong then. And I guess it has an impact on how calm you can be and how present you can be with the client, with
Mhm.
the patient. And so that brings you into the moment, being there with them and actually being there with them for them, rather than being in your mind and in your body being frightened or having all these normal human thoughts going on when you already enter the situation like that. That's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that, because that can actually, everyone can learn and train themselves to use that. And I guess at the moment, if people use that to go to the supermarket, go to their own work, or if it's people going to, you know, the pharmacy or wherever they go, they can use that, can't they?
Exactly. And even from a scientific perspective, I work with a lot of scientists that don't believe in, energy and woo woo and all that kind of stuff and zipping up your chakras. But it doesn't matter. Find whatever works for you to create a protective feeling.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, zipping up your chakras like I do, but whatever works for you, holding an old picture of a loved one or a crystal, or just even thinking through, okay, I'm going to protect myself today.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you is fine.
Awesome. So let's say that's the first one, have a wellness plan, know how to protect your mind and body, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. So that was the first one. Second, you shared something about that it's really important to reframe the situation we're in, so that we
Mm-hmm.
recognize that there are
Yeah,
small.
so when I go to work, it's obviously in the intensive care unit, it's life and death situations, and it can be very doom and gloom, and it's kind of what you see on the media. But for me as an ICU doctor, I really need to focus in on the small wins. Otherwise, my purpose and my point of being there to heal all these patients almost seems useless without actually understanding that, hey, I'm creating some sort of movement. So scientifically speaking, the ARDS, or the lung disease that this virus is causing people to go on life support, it typically is around 2 weeks that they will stay on this machine. We've learned that. It's a very long ICU stay. And
Mhm.
so all I'm looking for in that period of time is small wins. And a small win to me can even be, they didn't get worse today.
Mhm.
And I really try to grab those moments, and I try to say them out loud to my team members as well. Because if you see someone stuck on life support every single day for a week, it starts to wear on you that, oh, they're not getting better. But there's small changes in their labs, or maybe their kidneys are recovering now. And I make sure to make it a really big spectacle, a really big deal. And I put up my hands and I'm like, yes, you guys, they started making urine. So little things like that, I think, builds up the morale. And it helps
The
keep me
message
focused
out
that I am making a difference.
and sends a message to your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
be the doctor you need to be, but also sends the message out to the patient. And that's important because they need to know where they are on their healing journey.
Right. Yeah. And most of them are in induced coma, because we have them on heavy medications to make sure that they're comfortable on life support. It's not a normal way of breathing. So yeah, that's so true. And visitors aren't allowed at the hospital anymore. And so a lot of the nurses will get family members on the phone just so they can hear them. You never know what's going on in someone's mind while they're laying there in bed. So we want to make sure that we're delivering positive messages to them, healing messages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me on a whole other topic we're going to talk about another time, I'm sure, where we said about coma patients, didn't we, Rosie?
Yeah, exactly.
We were on
But
the
yeah,
other
so
side.
this last week I had one patient. She was very old, 80 years old. She was worsening. She was getting really bad. We had to put her on life support machine on very high settings. And I could have thought about her for the rest of the week and really focused in on her and how poorly she was doing. But I had 3 other patients that were getting better. And I was actually able to send out of the ICU into the regular wards because they weren't requiring as much oxygen. My 4 other patients on life support were we were weaning down their settings. And so those were small wins to me. And I don't know how she's doing because I took care of her only on the last 2 days of my last week. But I no longer allow one bad case to ruin my entire journey now.
I
And
need to take a deep breath on that.
I know, and I know that she's in good hands, and I'm hoping she's doing better. But I also know that it's too early to know if she's going down the tubes or if we can still save her.
Yeah.
So
So it's the small wins you really want to concentrate on for yourself, for the
mhm,
patient, so that you see progress, because progress is the stimulator in us, isn't it? To
mhm.
keep going,
Yes,
to be motivated,
right.
and to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's
Mhm.
progress which makes us go forward. And we all want to go forward. We all want to get through this. So if we don't see the small wins and concentrate on the big setbacks, then, I mean, if there is a big setback, we're going to face that. But looking out for the small wins is the focus you want to give us as advice and lesson to be looking out for. So obviously that's crucial for you and your patients, and for everyone who's listening to this right now. Make it relevant to the situation where you are in. And couldn't you imagine like someone who's at home ill, not needing to go to the hospital, but then also needs to look out for their small wins every day and every hour to get better.
Yes.
And if even if they're not ill, then it's situations where it's a life lesson to look at the small wins, really, because
Mhm.
if you are at home homeschooling and you find the day is completely overwhelming, look out for the small wins where your child is actually wanting to learn, or all these little things. So it's a real life
Exactly.
lesson to look out for the small wins.
Yeah.
And I'm so pleased you're sharing this, because I'm glad that it even makes it important in this kind of situation where you are in, that it is, yeah, absolutely relevant and important. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So that was looking out for the small wins. But you touched on something else which I want to emphasize, which probably leads us to the third real lesson.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned that we can't really be sure of what is going to happen. So you mentioned that you are not sure of what's going to happen with your elderly patient. And this is something you said, isn't it? So what is really in our control? And do we know that? We can't control everything.
Right. Yeah. So after I went through my own burnout in my job, I started diving deep into burnout research. And the number one risk factor for burnout in intensive care doctors, but I'm sure it's applicable to everyone, is lack of control of your environment. So things like scheduling or and it's pay, not getting the days off that you wanted, small things like that. So it's environmental control, not necessarily always the patients, but it does dive into the emotional aspect of the patients because you can't control who lives and who dies. All
Hmm.
you can do is do your best to help them through whatever movement that they're getting called to. So early on in this particular career, I learned that death is going to be a significant part of my profession.
Mhm.
That is something that I have to accept. And while I might fight heroically for someone to stay here with us and to save their life, I can't always do that. And, usually there's a tipping point
Mhm.
where I know that death is calling them and there's nothing I can do. I've maxed out all of my medical therapies. And at that point, I have decided to help control the situation for myself, for the patient, for their loved ones. I decide to instead focus my treatment on treating their comfort and their suffering that they might be experiencing, rather than continuing to do invasive, life-saving procedures. And it's sort of that small acceptance when they hit that tipping point that, okay, now I need to treat something else.
Mhm.
I'm still here for them
Mhm.
and I'm going to see them to the end, but I'm changing my focus, because some things you just can't control in that way. And it's a little bit odd because in the United States we don't talk about death and the life cycle, but in many developed countries, see, we just kind of avoid it. It's because it's a depressing topic and we never want to let our loved ones go, but it's something that is important to recognize and not dwell on, but recognize it in a way that allows us to live our life to the fullest
Mhm.
and really cherish the moments that we do have, and understand that it's 100% guarantee for all of us. Someday we're going to die. And that sounds scary, but what isn't scary is focusing in on what's happening now and what we can control and how we can show up. So for me as a physician, I show up to always treat my patients, whether it's trying to save them or save them from pain.
Mhm. Oh, what big messages in there. My
Yeah.
mind is going all around. I'm going, wow, you are in these situations where you actually have people dying in front of you, and then
Yeah.
knowing I did everything I could, which was in my control to help them heal or get to the place where
Mhm.
they are. Then realizing that some things you cannot control for them, something else is at play, something bigger is at play. Then also understanding that life and death are part of this life cycle. And
Mhm.
a book from Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, comes to my mind, where he talks about death being the greatest teacher, that we actually understand that every day is a gift. We are alive and we can be grateful for waking up and being here. And so, do you actually believe at this moment that through this corona crisis, there is this element of big teaching and big gift and chance for us to wake up to this new concept, or not a new concept, but maybe for some, how precious life is? Like, is that a magnifying glass for so many to see it so in their face? Or do you believe that's a wake up call for us?
Yeah. I think from either perspective, if you have someone, loved one who's going through it with this illness, instead of being scared, I have seen people become very present with themselves and present with their families. Quarantine life, there's a lot of funny memes on the internet, like, oh God, my mommy is drunk and, Timothy's on his second detention or something like that. But it's also reframing everything for everyone. And I think understanding, like, maybe I should slow down
Mm.
and be present a little bit more. So this coronavirus pandemic is creating a lot of new growth for people in various ways, no matter what they're going through. I think it's showing them something that they maybe need to see to live a more fulfilled life moving forward.
Oh, Rosie, you couldn't have it summed it up better. We will point out the 3 top lessons in the show notes again. Um, just to finish it up, and we will have another conversation. I'm sure you've got to come back if you like.
I would love to. I love you.
Great, great, great. This was all really informative, and even the last one, people can make relevant for their own life, and make every day the most precious life in their entire experience, and cherish the people around them to a new level, to a bigger level, and everything they do. So, as a last question for you, Rozy, I always ask my interview partners, what does happiness mean to you?
Oh, wow. What a profound question. Happiness to me is it's a feeling
Hmm?
of joy and love, and I think that it's something you can experience at any time, anywhere, and it's something that comes from within. So, and everyone defines it in different ways. So I personally define it as having small loving moments with my friends like you, and feeling energized, well rested. Little, I find happiness in little things all the time. And in fact, like my dad, here, I'll show you this. My dad just went into our backyard and picked these for me yesterday, and they brought me just so much happiness. Something so simple.
Isn't this red one just beaming with just this bum, this formation of the petals? It's just, oh, gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. Yes.
Geometry of it, which is stunning. Awesome. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Rozy. Thank you for your time. And thank you for being here for your patients, being there for your loved ones, sharing your lessons. And everyone who's listening to this, make sure you follow Rozy on her Instagram. There's lots of great ways she's talking about this current crisis and how she sees it. The Female Doc on Instagram, and we'll share everything else on the bottom below. All right. Thank you, Rozy.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.